Is it Mission Impossible? Is
It's
this the final reckoning?
I don't know, but we'll talk about it. What's going on, everyone? Welcome to Movie Emporium, spoiler-filled discussion of the new Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. This is once again directed by Christopher McQuarrie. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, 2 years later, and we finally have come back to The Final Reckoning. This is the eighth film in the Mission Impossible franchise, and it's going to be an interesting discussion because, of course, I have Triv, who is now joining me once again to continue this franchise for as long as it takes, probably 100 years. Who knows when we die? But Triv, welcome back to talk the next episode or next iteration of the Mission Impossible franchise. How the hell are you doing?
Ready to talk about some stunts?
And yeah, and some length, very, very long length,
Yes, it is
very
a bit
girthy
girthy.
length. Yeah, a little bit. A movie that's 2 hours and 49 minutes. And then you include the 25 minutes of trailers, and you have been in the theater for third or 1/9 of a day or whatever. So it's pretty crazy. Mission Impossible should not be this long. And yeah, so there we go. Triv. So Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is in essence the sequel to Mission Impossible: The Dead Reckoning, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, it's here. Stars people like Tom Cruise, and Tom Cruise doing crazy stunts, and of course the insurance people going, Tom Cruise, you're going to die one of these days if you're not careful. It
It
also
also
has,
starred Tom Cruise's balls, which, say what you will about all the rest of this stuff. Damn, dude's got some balls.
yeah, it's all that Scientology balls, you know. He's got that crazy, insane couch jumping balls. But Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning is, in essence, the continuation of the Mission Impossible sequel that was Dead Reckoning. It's about an entity that the world is under, what is that word called? Under barrage from.
Oh, it's
And
under threat from
yeah,
basically it's on the verge of nuclear Armageddon.
exactly. And nobody else but Tom Cruise's Ethan Hunt can stop it because apparently there's one person in this entire world that can stop the entity. And that, of course, is not the US government or the world, just one man who constantly finds himself in the most insane predicaments in the entire world. But this, in essence, is, like I said, is a continuation. Ethan has to continue to find himself chasing after Gabriel, who has stolen the poison pill that they need to basically take down the entity. This, of course, needs them to get onto this submersible sub that is, of course, drowned in the ocean. And it has some stuff that was not happy with, to be fairly honest. It's not a bad movie per se, but it is definitely one of the lower rung Mission Impossible movies, to the point where when I was doing my letterbox rankings, I almost put this below Mission Impossible 3. I can't put it to Mission
Wow.
Impossible 2 because I'm just not a fan of Mission Impossible 2. I think it's not a very good movie. I don't think the action sequences are that great. I don't know. It's just a little bit better Mission Impossible 3 that this movie actually borrows heavily from. And yeah, it's a difficult movie for me to stomach because I want to say I love this movie, but I think I actually admit on this movie. Um,
That's fair, I think.
Trev, I'll go to you. What is your overall like intro thoughts on this movie? Like not spoiling it, but just kind of what you think overall.
Right. I so I didn't I tried to go into this as blind as possible. I watched the teaser trailer, but that was kind of all that I watched outside of like the display ads that you get and things like that.
Mhm.
But people that you talked to beforehand had mentioned that it was heavy on stunts. Go for the stunts, don't go for the plot because there are some failings in that department. And
Mm.
like any
Mm.
this was left on a relative cliffhanger. Like it wasn't, Infinity War level to cliffhanger. But where do you go from Dead Reckoning? It was a big crazy thing. It had big crazy AI and,
Mm.
all the rest. My initial thoughts, I think the stunts were fantastic, which after what we saw in Dead Reckoning, I think they could only take them up from there, and there had been
Mm.
enough hype around them. The actual story, I had a lot of like Fast and Furious moments watching this, like just the way that it kind of upped its ante, and suspension of disbelief kind of really was stressed during this movie.
Yeah, I was
So,
listening to a podcast that says this is pretty much straight sci-fi now. It's
oh
not
yeah,
even that.
no,
It's turned into like, Fast and Furious was about cars and fast cars and turned into like a superhero franchise.
Oh yeah,
This went
this is
straight
that same
sci-fi.
way. Oh, it did.
Yeah,
I
it's
I always kind of like the later, and obviously not the first couple of Mission Impossibles, but you get to like, 4 and 5, they start to get a little bit of sci-fi with your spy movie.
mm,
This was a heavy sci-fi movie with a healthy dose of spy.
yeah. It's really disappointing because this franchise has always been something that's close. I think it's like one of my favorite franchises of all time. It goes places that are always fun and entertaining. Not saying that this movie doesn't have fun and entertainment, but it feels like there's a level of we're up our own butt at this point and we can do whatever we want. And I don't think the COVID situation helped, and I don't think the pandemic or not the same thing, but I don't think the pushing back on the strikes and stuff like that, and the fact that this movie with its inflated budget of $400 million,
Wow.
and it doesn't look like a $400 million movie, it looks like a 150 million dollar movie. And I think after watching Mission Impossible Fallout, I think this 2-part movie series that they did here really doesn't need to be. I think it should have just ended at Fallout and just been done with it. But Tom Cruise is going to Tom Cruise, and Christopher McQuarrie is going to Christopher McQuarrie.
Yeah.
And I think they put themselves in a corner by adding an artificial intelligence, which I understand artificial intelligence is, and I don't know if you agree with me, is a problem, especially in the entertainment industry. I mean, I can go
Yeah.
on Photoshop, and I do this just because I want to make the picture a little bit better. But you can go on Photoshop and you can, take the borders or take the top, and you can add AI generated portions of that image,
Right.
and it looks like it's part of the image. And as much as I don't like that, it is helpful. But making a movie like this and turning it into an AI artificial intelligence that is basically like a worse version of Skynet, and the people are just stupider than they are in like the Terminator franchise. I mean, everybody from the president to the cabinet to Gabriel to even Ethan Hunt, everybody just feels like lesser than in this,
Yeah.
especially in this movie. It's like Gabriel disappears through half the movie.
Well, and
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 it's just,
he becomes. I had read someplace that he becomes like a comic or like a cartoon villain, kind of a Snidely Whiplash, and he really does.
yeah,
He
it's,
becomes so focused on like ruling the world by controlling different like the AI aspects.
mhm,
He loses any subtlety, and not to say that he was a real subtle character to start with.
mhm.
I do think I kind of like the idea of AI as a villain because it was kind of the next. Because how many human villains can you have? I mean, we had 6 over the
I
course of the
mean,
first
I
6
don't know.
movies.
I mean,
Like
James
I
Bond
didn't
did it,
what
so
what I'm saying is I didn't mind the idea. It was I thought it was clever, and it had moments, but where they took it was kind of
mhm.
just, I don't know. It was kind of goofy. Yeah, the characters, it was all surface level with a good chunk of them. Like we don't really any depth and like nuance that they had in Dead Reckoning. We really didn't have that much of. They just kind of stood around, kind of, twirling their hands for a good chunk of the movie. I felt like.
Yeah, I mean, it's basically to get Tom Cruise to each set piece. But you can't do a movie like that because you start doing set piece movies and you turn into a Marvel movie. You turn
Yeah,
into something that is soulless. And I'm not saying this movie is soulless because there is fun and entertainment when it comes to like the set pieces and bringing back characters from the original like movie and stuff like that. But my overall problem with this movie is it feels like they didn't know what they wanted to do, and when they figured out what they wanted to do, they just didn't have enough story, so they needed to expand it to, oh, we're gonna have Ethan lose, spoiler, we're gonna have Ethan lose like a good friend who's been in the series the entire run, to we're gonna make this character and turn him into something like they did with, I can't remember what movie it was when like Rise of Skywalker, and then you have the whole Haley Atwell stuff, and then you have it's too many moving parts, it's too many pieces, it's too many convoluted plots. The whole idea of like the beginning hour of this movie is just exposition dump. I mean, I love seeing
yeah.
Hannah Waddingham. I love seeing Tramell Tillman, who I appreciate every time he went Mister, because it felt like he was his character in Severance.
Oh, it
I
was
mean, I
that was
like,
probably my favorite character. Like of all of the
yeah,
characters, he was a total standout. But even things like like Palm, like Paris, the Paris character.
Palm Klementieff, yeah, from
Yeah, I
Guardians, yeah.
yeah, they have her survive, and you think, okay, she's gonna play a massive role in the second movie just because,
Yeah.
okay, you don't just save a character for nothing. And I don't know, like, not to say that her
Well,
character didn't have impact, but
mhm.
there really wasn't that much. She was just part of the gang.
Our character basically is oh, don't shoot or murder anyone. That's her whole premise of her character. Her storyline was finished after the first movie. It's the same thing with Simon Pegg. It's the same thing with Greg Tarzan Davis, who some reason, some way decides he's going to join this crew. You know, the guy that was with the Shane Whigham character in the Dead Reckoning. He's just like, whatever. I'm just going to go with you on a quest for take down, whatever. And it's that kind of stuff. It's like Simon Pegg's character just feels kind of there. He doesn't give any his only big scene is like the one where Palm Clementieff's the Paris character just does the whole cut of his
Yeah.
chest to get the air from the collapse lung, which I actually thought was I thought that was pretty clever because a lot of times they'll just kind of yada yada that kind of stuff. They're like, no, we're gonna cut here and you're gonna jam me with the pen and
Did you just yada yada a collapsed lung?
yeah, sure, I did. But then I love the actions, but it's just like everything. I was when he goes into like the pod or whatever and talks to the AI artificial intelligence, it's like, oh my God, I don't care. And then it's like the beginning stuff is so weird and it's plotting and pacing all over the place. And when they bring Paris and they actually rescue her from the jail cell, and it's just like, and then the whole, as much as I like, going back and remembering the past 7 movies, it's like I don't need Angela Bassett's Erica Sloane character telling me about everything he's done because I know everything he's done. It's almost like, well, Tom Cruise is the major lead of this movie, and we need to have people remember what he's done. It's like if you're going to see the 8th film in a franchise, I'm pretty sure, unless they bring somebody like William Dunlow back, I'm pretty sure
Right.
you're going to remember those scenes that they're showing. So it's more like, hey, you remember this? You remember this? You remember the member berries? It's just like, a lot of this I don't
Yeah.
care about. And then, like, how Haley Atwell is brought back into the group is so stupid. And even Kittredge, who was like a major character in the first movie, is barely used and kind of a puss in this movie. And Shane Whigham, which I don't want to get into too many details, but we'll get into in a couple minutes, is literally the most useless character in this entire franchise. Like, I don't know I don't even understand why his character was even invented for this movie outside of some stupid ass reason.
Yeah,
And
and that's with any the thing that they talk about separating the like legacy movies, like good legacy movies from bad ones, is touching on those moments and making them count, but not making you go, see, look at this thing, look at this thing, oh my God, look at this thing. Like I've not seen it yet, but I've heard a lot of people say about Final Destination 6
mhm.
that it does a really good job of paying homage to what came previously, but then it moves on. It does a really
well,
good job. It's kind of the model
mhm.
of what you want your legacy sequel to be, as
well,
compared to this, where and it's not even a legacy sequel so much as just but it takes you to all of these moments, and it's like,
uh
does this change the overall perspective of the movie? Not really.
right. Because the funny thing about the Final Destination, you're right, is yes, it's the series is preposterous. I mean, the way it works out, but the fact that they used the sequels or the original movies, the sequels of 5 films and Final Destination, and somehow twisted it into connecting to this film and what the who's the Candyman guy?
Oh, Tony Todd.
Yeah, Tony Todd, how they connected it into where the story is playing out in this movie was it was what is that word called when it feels
Natural.
natural. Thank you. It feels natural. Here, it's just they're showing shots of the other movies. It's like, oh, here you this and this, and they
It's
keep doing
lazy.
it. Yeah, and then they do like the Star Wars like really quick transition shots, and it's like you keep going back to the same shot. It's like you don't need to keep doing this. We get what you're doing. We know what you're doing. It's my huge problem with this movie is just it just keeps going back to the same well of like exposition, 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 exposition. And when they go up into like we're told a billion times the entity, the entity, the entity. We're told a billion times, oh, we should start nuclear war. We should start nuclear war. They get in the details of like how the one thing about this movie doesn't do well enough. And the thing that it should do is it's positioning itself into the world that we currently live in, with people on both sides, with people like that are for the AI and are willing to protect the AI, and the people that aren't, because you see that at the beginning of the movie, which is, I don't know if you agree with me, is really, and it's really a testament and really showing like what it's trying to do as human race when it comes to Americans and stuff like that, and that world,
Well,
how
the
we are.
people of the world, not just
Yeah,
not just
like,
people in the
yeah,
States.
Israel and Palestine, Americans on both sides or whatever. But it doesn't really follow through with that. We see stuff at the
No.
beginning. We see a couple people turn, one of the members of the cabinet. We see, somebody try to kill Hunt on the submarine.
That's really all we get out of it is the fact that you get those two people that are clearly believing in that level of cult. Like that whole buildup at the start was for this one fight. It could have just
Yeah,
been a rogue agent or whatever.
yeah, and I just think I think they wrote themselves in a corner with Dead Reckoning, where they went too far in one direction and they can't get themselves out of that now, and they're stuck doing this really convoluted plot of we need to take the entity and eventually upload it to a server farm or whatever, and then we have to put it on a, I don't know, the most ridiculous like drive that's like basically a crystal out of a video game or something like that. And
Yeah,
apparently
they kind of
the only reason Haley Atwell is even in this series apparently is so she can, take the little thing out before, it infects the system or whatever, the little jewel drive or whatever. But
optic drive, yeah.
yeah, but I'm sorry, what were you saying?
Oh, I'm just gonna say like I love Ving Rhames as Luther. He's one of my like he's always such a great character. But they
Hmm.
made him like Einstein level intelligent for this. Like no one else could create
Well,
this thing.
yeah, well, he's always been that character that has been the
Well, he's a tech whiz, no
well,
doubt.
yeah, he's a tech, because so the poison pill is something that makes sense, something he could do. I mean, in the world of Mission Impossible, so that didn't bother me too much. It's just the idea of like quantum computing and stuff like that. I know it's getting small and the chips are getting small, but to tie that into like this thumb drive that is going to keep it has 16 terabytes or 130,000 terabytes, whatever it fucking has. And it's
325
gonna it's
terabytes. 365 terabytes.
Oh, well, whatever it has, it's gonna keep an entity, and they're gonna. I gotta ask. I'm gonna go to the end, but I'm gonna ask you this: did you get the reference to what the fuck is that movie? Pulp Fiction. To Pulp Fiction. Did you get the reference, or did
I
you get
don't
the?
think so.
Okay, so when he
Maybe.
opens up the case,
Oh
the
yeah,
drive is
the yeah,
glowing.
yeah, yeah,
I'm like, that
gotcha.
that is Christopher McQuarrie and Tom Cruise going. That's what's inside the case. The case is smaller, but I'm like, that's exact. If they're not exactly referencing Pulp Fiction, then that is the biggest ironic reference I've ever seen in my entire life, because he looks at it, he's like, oh, look at that, and then they close it. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, it is a kind
No,
of a soul.
yeah, I could kind of see it. I mean, if you think about it, that the entity is not necessarily alive, but I mean, there is intelligence there and learning on its
Yeah.
own, so it did gain
Yeah.
sentience in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Is he gonna put it up in like an air conditioned vent like Dexter does and just keep it there for the rest of time or whatever? I
That's
don't
all
know.
we can hope. Bury it
Uh,
where they buried Jimmy Hoffa.
exactly. But I mean, yeah, as far as the story, like I said, Kittredge and Shea Whigham's character don't really do much of anything, and the whole cabinet is just a bunch of bickering assholes, and it's just, and like I
I mean,
said, when Tom Cruise goes off and does his thing, and then you have his other crew just going off, and it's just like, okay, sure, whatever.
I do kind of think like the way that they play people, like, and it's a stereotypical thing, but I do think you get those government types, like, no one would trust anyone else to shut down their nuclear arms. Like, in that scenario where, the world is going to hell in a handbasket, I could see certain governments not, like, wanting to, put down their guard to anybody else.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think that's an across the board response, but you get the paranoid stuff, especially if something like that came about. I could see a scenario where that is, but it is very cartoony in its in the way that it does it.
Yeah, and like, they go to um the what is that? The
The Bering Sea.
no, 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 no. They go to like the gala, and that's straight up from like 10 other movies that they've done so far in Mission Impossible where they're going
Oh yeah.
to some kind of dinner and they
I
get
mean, that's a
captured
good chunk
immediately.
of this. There's a lot of like in Mission Impossible touchstones. You've got like abandoned tunnels, you've got the gala, you've got like
Yeah,
things hidden under like really
things.
well-known landmarks. And
Yeah, it's
I did wonder if
kind of
there was something
ridiculous.
specific because in London the square that they were on is called Trafalgar Square. It's a
Yeah.
really well-known square. They went back to that a couple times, and I'm not sure if it was just because that's where they started the movie, or if that was just like something specific about like the Nelson column or something.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, we're talking about a movie where Tom Cruise can run down the bridge right next to the Big Ben, and nobody's on the bridge. Nobody's
Oh yeah.
driving. Like it's empty. Like that's like when he was running down in New York City in Vanilla Sky. It's like that is impossible. That I mean, yes, that was kind of a dream or whatever, but that's literally something that would never happen. So
Yeah.
like him being able to run down the middle of whatever bridge is it, whatever bridge that is,
It's I'm not well. It's
London
right by
Bridge.
Westminster. Yeah, I don't think it's
Yeah.
London. But anyway,
No, I know.
but
I'm just
I had to laugh though because I was watching Double Toasted their review of it just to get some other opinions, and like it was like at that point when you're running because they always do the if you're
Mhm.
running quick and short distances. You chop through the air like that. Like that's a proper way to run. But they're like, okay,
Yeah.
at what point don't you just like confiscate a car or call an Uber to get you where
Especially
you're
when there's
going? Is
no
it?
cars on the road. There's
Oh yeah.
nobody on the like it's funny, like even like I watched the movie, I'm pretty sure you may have watched this called Run Fat Boy Run with
Hmm.
Simon Pegg.
Yeah.
And even that they're he's running it through England. There's everyone like million like people on the road. And the other thing that I have to laugh about is like what's the difference between where he's at where they are captured and they realize what Gabriel's about to do with Luther. Like think about how far of a distance he's traveling and he seems to not like die of exhaustion. Like the amount of times he's like when he runs out of the mountainside or whatever in that in South Africa,
Oh
he's
God,
like
he
running
does it
towards a plane.
twice. It's like, okay, we're repeating the same thing from earlier in the movie. What the hell's going on?
I mean, he's literally like the fastest guy on the planet because he can chase down an airplane. It's just
Oh
it's
yeah.
fucking crazy.
And the endurance
Um,
of yeah, it that was and I don't know, do we want to get more into stuff? Because I have several thoughts on like the superhuman nature of Tom Cruise in this movie.
well, no, we can talk about anything. I'm just kind of I'm trying to piece into like kind of this movie as a whole. It's really just a lot of stuff. It's too long. It should have been like 2 hours and 10 minutes. Like it's no reason. It's like no reason for this movie to be two
Oh,
hours and
I
49
agree.
minutes.
And I don't
I
know,
mean,
I feel like they were and I understand that Tom Cruise has been the heart and soul of this franchise, both
mhm,
from a real world outside perspective and as obviously Ethan Hunt in the universe. They it felt like they felt like it felt like they needed to reinforce, oh well, Ethan Hunt is a good guy. Oh, Ethan Hunt, he saved everybody. Oh,
yeah,
he did this and
it's
he did
like
that and it got to the point of being okay. If you took a shot every time someone said a word of praise about Ethan Hunt, you'd be drunk in the first 10 minutes.
hell, you'd be drunk just going off the entity. Like how many
Hmm.
times did they say the entity? The entity. It's like, good lord, god damn.
I was hoping they would switch it up and call it the Entity.
Yeah, right, right.
That's a porn
Should
though,
have.
so.
I mean, but basically, they are chasing after Gabriel in the beginning of this movie. They are captured. He tells them his plan, what he need. He needs Ethan to get the drive out of the Celestial, and it leads to him. I don't know if Ving Rhames is really sick or it's a plot point that never really gets fully understood. But
I actually
apparently,
looked this up, and at
uh,
least they say that he's got bad knees, but otherwise there's been no official
well, the
anything.
bad knees, fine. I guess that's
Well,
fine.
no,
But he's like, he has
yeah.
a hospital bed and a nurse, and
And he
like it
wasn't
never,
that way 2 months previous. It's like I didn't get
yeah,
it
like
either. It was
they never explain what's happening. But he designs this poison pill that could basically effectively end the entity's life. You're sitting here watching this stuff, and it's like, okay, okay, so the poison pill. Okay, I don't need to explain this again. I don't need this explained to me again. I don't need this explained to me again. And then and then what happens is a nuclear bomb with a timer, like every other Mission Impossible movie, is placed in the cell or placed in the room where Luther Stickle is, and he breaks all the locks and keys or whatever. And this is when Ethan Hunt and Luther Stickle have their last moment together because they're going to kill off Ving Rhames' character, who has been the second hero for this entire franchise because he's been in every single movie. I think it was a really misguided, really kind of terrible send off, to be fairly honest, because it's like, is this mean Ving Rhames just doesn't want to come back? I don't think it was very well done. Like if it had been something else, maybe like he totally didn't tell Ethan that he was really sick, and maybe he dies at the end, and like he just died because he's really sick. I think that would have been a much more touching moment. But having him die by a villain that's not really that interesting kind of is a not really great to me. But it's not the worst thing. It's not the worst offensive that they do in this movie when
Yeah.
it comes to Revelations. I don't know. What do you think?
It's kind of it's supposed to be a touching sacrifice, I think, just to kind of push Ethan forward. But I don't know. It doesn't, not that Luther hasn't earned that love and respect, but the way that it comes about, I don't think there's enough there to push it ahead. Like the sacrifice doesn't feel like it's a sacrifice.
Yeah,
Because we've
it
seen
just.
them detonate so many bombs before.
Mm,
And I don't know. I guess, they start spewing all the numbers like, oh, it's gonna turn London into an ashtray and it's gonna do this and it's gonna do that. And it's like, I don't know. At that moment, like in Walking Dead when the hero, like the character will give like a soliloquy or some really touching moment,
yeah.
they're gonna die. That was this. And I don't know. If it had come out of nowhere, maybe. But it just, I don't know. Like the
Well,
sacrifices and like those really touching moments, it just didn't hit with this movie.
yeah. Well, it's like when Rebecca Ferguson died, so she could do Silo or whatever. It's like you're getting rid of this. It's like then they bring in Haley Atwell, and it's like I like Haley Atwell. I think she's a very talented actress, but she literally adds nothing to this movie at all, to these two movies. Rebecca Ferguson had this really interesting arc to her story, and it just kind of was like, no, we're just gonna kill her off, and with Gabriel, it just seems to kill off all Ethan Hunt's people.
Yeah.
Especially as like I don't know if that was his girlfriend or original wife in Dead Reckoning that we saw,
That
but
that
it
is one thing
leads,
that you
yeah,
talked about before, and I real quick wanted to add to it. When Gabriel tells Ethan that he needs him to go to the sub and get
mm,
the drive and such,
yeah.
but didn't give him any didn't take him there, didn't provide him any stuff. And then you see how much stuff he has to go through to be able to get there. If he really wanted it that badly, why wouldn't he provide some kind of assistance?
I don't know. I mean, it's Gabriel. He turns into a comedian or comic bad guy.
He really
It's
does. He turns into Snidely Whiplash, and it's kind of weird.
Yeah, he's basically you're going to be at the end of the movie and it's kind of the beginning, and we're not going to see you, and we're going to go off on this really convoluted adventure, and I don't know, but in essence, he is taken back to I don't know where that Langley or whatever he goes back to, NORAD or whatever it is, and we find out that basically the entire world's nuclear arsenal is being consumed by the entity, and in 4 days, everybody who has nuclear arsenals is going to fall. And Ethan Hunt's the only one that can stop them. Or Ethan Hunt convinces the president that he's the only one that can stop him. He needs the key. He needs to get on his own ship, the Georgia or George W. Bush, which I think is a callback to like George. I think George W. Bush was the president at the time. Was
George
he or Bill?
H.W. It's the George H.W. Bush, and yeah, this came out
Oh
in 92, right?
no, the original came out in '96.
96. That would
So
have
that
been
would have been
Clinton
Bill
would have been in
Clinton. Yeah,
office.
yeah.
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe that was like a callback to, but anyways, and there's just a lot of exposition, a lot of talking, a lot of arguing, a lot of Nick Offerman and Janet McTeer and Holt McCallany and Angela Bassett. Angela Bassett writes a note, stamps it, and says, let's Ethan Hunt basically go without the approval of the cabinet. And it leads into them searching for the Sevestival. It's not very interesting. It's very boring. I was falling asleep while watching that portion, to be fairly honest. Even when he gets on the shit, even when he gets on the Sevestival and, the Hannah Waddington character appears, and he gives her the note. The note says May 22nd, 1996. Do you know why that's important?
Is that the date that the original Mission Impossible came out?
It's supposed to be the date. It's supposed to be the date that his wife or whatever was killed when Ethan Hunt joined IMF or whatever. But it's so stupid. It's so stupid. It's like, okay, May 22nd, 1996 or whatever it is. And then I think even Hannah Waddingham, who plays the like the ship's like commander, is just wasted.
I did
And
like
they
Angela
devised.
Bassett's character. I thought that she had some good points.
She does, but it's just like.
Everything around her is wasted, yeah.
But even when Nick Offerman dies and kill or is killed, and when he kills that guy, and it such seems so wasteful and all that stuff, it's. But
Yeah,
then they figure out a plan where the crew is going to go to a station in is it Alaska? Not
yeah,
Alaska,
it's
but the Bering
St.
Strait.
Matthew's Island. It's
St.
between
Matthews.
Russia. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And there's a whole standstill like in the Cold War, the Cuban Missile Crisis situation where the Russians and the Americans are looking for the same thing, and they need Ethan Hunt needs a submarine so they can pinpoint where the ship is located. And okay, so they take him and he jumps off, and somehow makes it onto the ship, which is it's really boring stuff. It makes me kind of visibly angry to think about.
It's the thing about the timings of everything because like to get Ethan from the George H.W. Bush to the USS Ohio, which is the submarine they
Yeah.
need to get onto, they have to be at a specific place at a very specific moment, and that's if
Yeah.
if the thing comes up, so much is left to chance and so much good luck comes to them. Like you could take Ethan
Yes.
Hunt to like a casino, put it
Uh-huh.
all on black, and come away a billionaire.
Right. It's like him hitting blackjack on 21 on every single hand. It's
Yeah.
ridiculous.
Not that
Um
he's like a Mary Sue, but that's everything that happens is so
yeah.
like everything falls into place and there's no they build all of these massive odds. Okay, he's going to be in the freezing water. We have a minute to hit this
Mhm.
specific spot if we're able to hit it, and it's just all of that kind of goes away. It's like, "Oh, okay, I guess we didn't need to worry about that."
And like all of a sudden the submarine divers are just there. Like it worked so well and so conveniently. And then on top of that, Kittredge and the guy Shea Whigham plays, they're like, oh, we're gonna go off on our own adventure and we're gonna do our thing. And it like turns into like the most idiotic thing I've ever seen.
Yeah, it doesn't
um
add anything. Like it adds. You talk about this movie being 2 hours and 10 minutes.
no, it's
Them
2 hours and
doing their
49
stuff.
minutes.
Sorry, 2 hours and 49 minutes.
Yeah.
But no, you want it to be 2:10.
Yeah.
Them interfering in the last like 45 minutes added a good probably 20 minutes to that whole story and didn't really change anything.
Yeah, and then like when they drive off, they're like, "Oh, well," the Shea Whigham character goes, "Oh, well, it's your funeral." It's like then they just disappear until they pick up Ethan Hunt at the end of the movie. It's like, what they just,
They went
anyways,
for a beer. That's what their big
they
plan
went for a
was.
good old South African beer. That's what they
Yeah,
went for.
exactly.
I do think this is the point where I actually started enjoying the movie a lot more because it turns into he gets on the sub and that's where Katy O'Brien's at. That's where the one that loves Brianna Tarth in Game of Thrones. I can't remember what his name is.
Oh, the guy with the beard.
He's the yeah, the guy with the beard.
Dude, he was good
um,
looking. Brrr.
yeah, I mean, of course. That's where Ethan explains this crazy scenario that they need to go to a specific location and track it every 5 minutes for 20 hours or whatever it is, 2 days or whatever it is.
15 minutes every 2 hours.
Okay. Well, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So 15 minutes every 2 hours. This is how much I paid attention. And the rest of the crew go to St. Martin's Island. That's where they come across William Dunlow, who was the guy that got sent to here because of the incident in Langley with the knife and the knock list. And I like what they did with um, William Dunlow. I think they actually made a character that was literally only in 5 minutes of the movie have a really interesting story
Oh
and he's
yeah,
now married to this woman who is of of where they're at.
she's an Inuit.
And yeah, Inuit. And I love the idea of like that he's found a new purpose in life, and he knows a little bit about the festival, and he knows all this stuff because the Russians pop up, and the guy from every movie that has Russians in it, including like Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, is the main guy that's in the Russian army. And I do like this stuff because I think it's entertaining. I think it has some good action. It's coinciding with Ethan Hunt being not only being attacked by one of the AI enthusiasts, but having to use like technology that you saw in like something like The Abyss, and having to go down to the festival and talking about the bends and talking about the effects of what could happen, which never really get paid off because it doesn't really
That's the
affect him
thing
that much.
too. It's like you expect, okay, he's got to dive through like
Mm.
multiple rooms of a sub, go by all of these missiles, and yeah, that part of it is never talked about. Like he does run into issues with the missiles, but it's like
Well, I'm not even
that
talking
was
about that. I'm talking about just the dive, like
oh
the
yeah, no,
dive
I get
down.
you.
Like they talk about how you have all these issues because it's the unit the whatever it is that he wears is experimental. So like he'll go down there, he has a good chance of getting the bends, and when he rises, he has to make sure he doesn't explode his lungs and stuff like that. But I thought all that stuff was cool. I thought the idea, like when he goes out of the hatch and he sees the submarine behind him, the Russian submarine. I thought that was all pretty cool.
That was
Stuff that's
neat.
really high and stuff that's really deep makes me very uncomfortable. That's why the Ghost Protocol scene with the Burge Khalif really made me like hold
Oh
on to
yeah,
my like
I
it's
can
all
bet.
stuff that just makes you because they're really deep and stuff like that. And once again, Tramell Tillman, awesome guy,
Fantastic.
calling Ethan Hunt Mister, which is really funny.
Are you gonna change the name of
It's,
your channel to Mr. Reviews?
I am, yes. I expect everyone to call me Mister from now on. But he goes down there and it's a really cool action set piece where like once he gets into the ship, he only has a certain amount of time before the ship rolls off. Before the submarine just rolls. It rolls like a barrel down almost down the cliff and stuff like that. And he's being barraged by missiles, and he's like, having to try and get into the room where the entity and the drive is at, which I thought that was all good stuff. It made me on the edge of my seat. It was like, this is really cool stuff.
There was
And
one thing I saw. It's kind of
yeah.
funny, but when the sub starts to kind of be affected by
Mhm.
Ethan Hunt, they're like, "Oh man, he could fart weird, and it would tip the entire sub over."
I was just waiting for like a penny to drop on the top of the sub, just to make it fall or whatever. Yeah, but it's good stuff. Like the way he escapes, he realizes that his tank is not going to fit with attached to him. He has to like pull it off, and he has to like remove all his like wetsuit and stuff like that. So it's like an extension of disbelief or whatever. But it's
I
it's
had a
funny because
hard time. I had a really hard time with that bit. Like I understand suspension of disbelief,
mm,
but everything that
mm.
it took to get him to the sub, and then it's not like he's 50 feet down and in the Caribbean. He's in the freaking Bering Strait, or the Bering
Well, to
Sea,
be
and
fair, I mean they do mention the decompression, and
he's in his blacky whiteys or
it's
the
Ethan
tidy
Hunt, man.
blackies.
He's a Scientologist. He's a god at this
Is he
point. He's
also
like the deity.
Superman? Because there's
Yes,
no way. There's no
yes.
way.
I mean,
Had a
I
nice
think
little ice bath against the ice sheet above him.
yeah.
And how
I
and I
mean, Trip.
understand I
I mean,
get
Trip.
it.
Come
I
on. I mean, we're talking about a movie
yeah.
that took an hour and a half to get to this point. I mean, you got to give me some.
Fair.
No, I'm kidding.
You
I'm
can
kidding.
have that. You can have
I
that.
can have
But
Ethan
the
Hunt in
fact
his
that
tidy
they had a
whities.
literal like blow up bariatric chamber like like a whatever the kind of the chamber is that they
Mm,
brought him up through the pressure. Not a
yeah.
bariatric. What is it? A bear
Decompression chamber.
decompression chamber. Thank you. Apologies. I don't know where I was going with that, but the fact that they had a blow up chamber and it worked and yeah, okay.
We're talking about a movie. We're talking about a franchise that had gum that could explode.
I believe that over this. Like that wasn't suspension of disbelief for me. I'm just sitting there like, okay, you know what? I'm enjoying this, but my suspension of disbelief went out to have a drink because it can't handle this.
We're talking about a franchise that had I don't know motorcycle foo and hanging off the side of a plane as it's going 400 miles an hour. I mean, I
Hey,
think
if you
this
can
is like
hang
the
on
least of
to
its
a
worries.
bullet train,
I mean,
fine. But
yeah.
he gained God status in this. The entity should have worried about him trying to take his spot as god of the earth.
I mean, it's Ethan Hunt. He can do anything and everything. He is the Dominic Toretto of this series.
Oh, absolutely.
But he escapes through the hatch and he realizes that apparently the air suit will not survive, so he somehow survives under freezing cold water up to
Yeah,
the ice.
exactly.
I mean, it's suspension of disbelief, but I don't mind it. I think that whole scene was pretty awesome. And somehow, Haley Atwell saves him, and she has to be in the compression tent or decompression tent for whatever reason.
Because he was dead, she had to give him CPR. Sexy
But
CPR.
why? But the whole point of decompression tent is to decompress the person that needs decompression, not the person,
Exactly.
not Haley Atwell's character who literally has nothing to do in this movie. I mean, outside of like kicking some ass and riding on like sled dogs, in the middle of the snow, and I don't know. It's weird. I love the whole action sequence in the cabin, and you
No, that was
know
great. I love that.
it is funny every time a Tom Cruise action movie comes out. It's always this would cause a national incident. When they start fighting the Russian guys, that would cause a national incident. Or when they have the two helicopters flying in Russian enemy territory, that would it's the same thing in Top Gun. Everything they do in that. Um, but basically, they get the drive. Tom Cruise and all them decide that they're going to go to South Africa, and
As you do.
they're going, yeah, as you do, and with the help of William Dunlow and his wife, who really don't have a purpose the rest of this movie outside of dismantling a bomb and somehow being like good runners at the end of the movie. I'm imagining that William Dunlow and his wife are not exactly speedy people. I can see like the Greg Tarzan Davis character being speedy because he's he seems like a fit guy, but yeah, not the two older people. They don't seem like they could outrun a 10-second bomb. I mean, I'm just saying from experience. I'm pretty sure I couldn't run a 30-second bomb. But I mean, like I said, it's a nitpick more than anything. I really enjoyed those two characters. I thought they were fun, and they really add some really interesting, fun ideas. And then it leads. I'll get into some like real nitpicks, but it leads into a really cool action set piece where they finally see Gabriel again, and he's like, they've decided they're going to give him so that they can, go into the server room and take over the entity and stuff like that. It's a good plan that is ruined by the two useless characters in this movie. But it leads to probably one of the coolest action set pieces in the entire franchise, to be fairly honest. And the fact that Tom Cruise actually did this. I mean, of course, he had like stunt people like drive, like flying the planes and stuff like that, or maybe flying the planes. I know it's Tom Cruise, so maybe he flew the plane himself.
Probably. He was both
Um,
flying the plane and hanging from the plane.
yeah, and of course there are, he's hanging from wires and stuff that they digitally remove,
Oh
but
yeah.
it is one hell of a sequence. Like if there's something that Mission Impossible does better than most movies that aren't like Japanese action movies or Gareth Evans doing like the raid, it's this set pieces. And this set piece, as long as it is one of the most thrilling. It's all in IMAX. That's where I saw it in IMAX, so it was all like full screen,
Oh,
and
nice.
it feels real. It doesn't feel fake. It doesn't feel digital. Maybe they probably digitally took out some stuff, but it's one hell of a set piece.
They couldn't
And
do anything for Tom Cruse's hair though. He ended up
oh
looking
yeah,
like
yeah,
Bill
yeah.
Howard from the Three Stooges.
Right. Yeah, I noticed that too. I started laughing. I'm like, yeah, some hairdo. And
Yeah.
he puts on a flight helmet or like a leather helmet and some glasses. The glasses I get, but why is he putting on the leather helmet?
Probably to protect his ears because that would get really cold really quickly.
Well, I heard somewhere that like they only filmed 10 minutes at a time because of how cold Tom Cruise would get, like
Oh,
how
I
like it
bet.
would yeah, it would cause because of how high they are. But it's one hell of a stunt. I think Gabriel goes in the funniest way possible. He's like, I'm the only one that have parachute. Slam right into the tail fin of the plane. And he's like, oh, it's like really graphic. And
Yeah.
Gabriel is just kind of a useless character in this movie. He's like, oh, I'm gonna get the device or whatever, and I'm gonna use the poison pill. I'm gonna control the entity. And like, none of that happens. I mean, he dies in the most hilarious way possible, and
Yeah.
Ethan Hunt does what Ethan Hunt does, where he saves the entire day and while falling from a chute that is, parachute that is like
On
caught on
fire.
fire, and he hasn't opened up the reserve chute. and somehow he makes it down to the ground without really a scratch outside of some punches that he's received.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, and Haley Atwell's character is able to put the entity onto a drive, and everybody goes back to normal. Happy ending. Everybody goes off, and they're all in the square like they are at every Mission Impossible movie at the end. And
So that
kind of
reminded
nice.
me of the way that A Dark Knight Rises ends.
Yeah.
Like you have Michael Caine sitting across the way in the cafe in
Oh
Paris
yeah, they're like,
from
he's
yeah,
like,
exactly. They just kind of nod and then they take off.
right. It is kind of nice that Haley Atwell doesn't really play a love interest more than anything, because every female lead in this movie, in these movies, are love interested in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Even Carrie Russell, who dies at the beginning of three, is kind of a love interest to Ethan. But it's kind of nice. Like I said, if this movie franchise had finished at Fallout, it would have been perfect because you got the ending, kind of connection with Julie and Ethan, and you got like the ending pieces to kind of what the story's been going towards, and they kind of just, I mean, the things that bother me the most are things we haven't even talked about yet. But I mean, overall, like the last from the point when they're on the submarine to this point at the end, what did you think of that kind of stuff? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did
Oh, it was
you?
fantastic. I mean, if we would have started, not that long before that, like capture, start up mid-action, go from there. Like I said, there's way too much exposition for this, and the fact
Mhm.
that they had to explain that much to people makes you go, okay, maybe your story was a little bit too complex.
Yeah.
Complex isn't the right word, but it's too in depth for you to, if you can't like say this out in just a short bit, then maybe we need to reconsider, rewrite so it's a little bit shorter, make it more compact.
Well, the one thing that I think, once again, like how you're listening to Double Toasted, I listened to the Film Cast, which is another really popular podcast, and they made a joke, but I thought it would actually been kind of clever, where they go, maybe it should have been like Ethan Hunt on the plane, and then it freeze frames, and it's like, you want to hear how I got into this situation, and then I got myself in this situation. I thought it was kind of funny. I don't think that would have been a good idea, but it was funny. I don't
Well,
know. It's like,
double toasted
yeah.
brought up, because you again, like you brought up the fact that the entity cult members had infiltrated government
Mm,
positions, all that stuff. That would have been a really interesting perspective and a way to take it. Let
yeah.
Gabriel be the leader of these people and really bring it to light. But they didn't really do anything with all the stuff that they set up.
Well, I also think the entity is a lazy excuse for AI. I think you can use AI in a really interesting way, like they do with how they Gabriel's like photo, or when he's on camera, like he's like digitally taken out of the
Right.
video, and like when they're able to use for Ethan when they like digitally manipulate. I think that's cool stuff for AI in general because it kind of shows what AI is capable of. But Gabriel could be much more interesting as a villain if they would use him more and use him in a different way. That's why Owen Davian in three, and Jim Phillips in one, and there's not Henry Cavill in Fallout are really interesting villains because they have really interesting ideas, and they're absurd in a lot of ways, but they're really interesting. Gabriel's just not.
Yeah.
And that's kind of my biggest complaint is like, it's just not a very interesting villain. It
Yeah.
doesn't lead to anything. And one of the worst things that I think that they did was the rabbit's foot was a interesting idea for just a MacGuffin in the third movie. Ethan Hunt saves it or gets it so he can save his wife, and that's all you really needed to do with that. But then they turned it into the anti-god, the creation of the entity that basically Ethan Hunt is responsible for, and that's why the entity is where it's here. I sometimes the idea of like retconning ideas from the past and turning them, especially like Final Destination, works. But using the rabbit's foot and making it here just feels like they wanted to call back to Mission Impossible 3 with Owen Davian, and have Gabriel go, you did this and this and this, and you're responsible for this. That's not to me a Mission Impossible movie. Mission Impossible is a story about a man who has to go to all lengths to stop something, not, oh, we're going to retcon a plot point from 15, 20 years prior into a story that doesn't really work. And it's almost like, if they had taken the missile from, Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, or, done, I don't know, the Knock List and had that continue. It just, I did like when Jan McTeer, who plays one of the cabinet members, goes, "What the hell is a knockless?" I'm like, "Oh my god, that is a teenager child today going, what the hell is this? That type of scenario where how we were when we were younger, we like our parents would talk about something like, how are you talking about? And so that to me was a great that to me is a
Yeah.
great joke because it really is showing you that this is 30 years later. And I like I said, I like that idea. But I mean, what do you think about them using that idea, the rabbit's foot, as what the reason for the entity?
It's one of those things that, if done well, like you said, with Final Destination, it was done well. With something like this, I don't know if it's something where they would have like gone back and combed through things that they could use. Like some people are gonna look at that and go, "Oh, hey, there's that thing I know from that, the franchise that I enjoy." And other people are gonna go, "Well, that's just kind of dumb." I didn't have a big overall issue with it, but it's also, I don't know. How many times, like, I mean, you can look at the Mission Impossible movies and say, okay, they're telling essentially, at its core, it is the same story told, seven, eight different ways, right? But I don't know. I didn't have an overall issue with it, but it's like, okay. The fact that it wasn't incorporated from the last one a little bit to kind of give you, like, leave breadcrumbs along the way through both of
I
these
feel
movies.
I feel like the Christopher McQuarrie and Eric Jenderson said, what would be cool? And like what? Or Christopher McQuarrie, one of the two was like, what? We should use the rabbit's foot as a main MacGuffin in this. Oh, we should have done that in the last movie. It's like it feels like that a little bit. Like
No,
they
it
they
totally
like, oh
does.
yeah.
I mean, a lot of the stuff
Um,
that happens in this movie, it kind of comes out of nowhere. If it's something where you lay those, and obviously, I don't know, like you said, it sort of feels like they wrote themselves into a corner with Dead Reckoning.
mm,
And then they picked up what they could and went, okay, we've got all these random pieces. We need to build
yeah,
something out of it. And they had
yeah.
they knew that they wanted to do these big crazy set pieces, but they didn't know what the connective tissue was going to be.
And how the hell did the rabbit's foot? Okay, this is just me being nerdy. How the hell did the rabbit's foot end up in a Russian sub? Like they don't
Repeat to
really.
yourself, it's just a show, you should really just relax.
I guess it's like I'm pretty
No,
sure the
I
Americans had the rabbit.
that's a whole separate spin-off movie in the realm of like the ballerina or
oh well, wait.
something
We're
like
supposed to give this a positive review.
that.
Oh shit! I'm sorry, Triv. We got to do take two. Fucking
That's the thing.
Lionsgate.
Well, yeah, the thing is with all of this, there isn't. It's not. And I know we're kind of. I'm getting a little bit away from the subject, but there is a lot of good in this. There is a lot of things, like it is the absolute epitome of a summer blockbuster, right? It's a
Well,
popcorn movie,
I
right?
mean, I wouldn't say I was like truly offended. I'm so invested in the series that when this stuff kind of happens, it's like son of a
Yeah.
bitch. It's like when you get invested in like the Twilight series, which I know you're big into.
Oh
Um,
God, really? Of all
I
the
mean, I don't
series
know.
that you
I
could
heard you like the
pick,
Twinkle Stars
Jesus
of
Christ.
Jacob.
Yeah,
Um,
100%. Team
if there's one
Clifford.
if there's one thing I truly can't forgive, and this is the Ray is Palpatine moment, is making the Shea Whigham character into Jim Phillips' son, who literally doesn't no idea why his father died and is blaming Ethan Hunt for
Yeah.
this. And at no point in the Dead Reckoning movie, no point through up until the point that it happens, is there any logical ideology that he's upset with Ethan. There's no rhyme or reason to any of it. And they just go la 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 Jim Phillips son. No, 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 no.
Yeah,
That makes
that
no
was
fucking sense. That nothing about that is absolutely logical in any sense or form. That is, you guys wanted somebody like him to have an importance to this movie who does absolutely nothing to the two movies. And literally in this movie, he does really nothing but appears. And you're telling me he's Jim Phillips' son and he's pissed off at Ethan Hunt?
He doesn't
You
even look like
know,
John Voight.
well, thank God. I hope nobody looks like John Voight. It's too much telling people he has a boner in that fucking Francis Ford Coppola movie, but um, that is one of the most idiotic things I've seen a series like this do. It's like you don't need to do that. You don't need to
Of
make
course not.
random Jasper Briggs guy who doesn't even have the same name as Jim Phillips, who hates Ethan Hunt for killing off his father, but has a different name. If you hate your father I could understand or hate one of your parents. I could understand you turning like changing your name so you don't, somebody who was like related to Hitler. I'm pretty sure you don't want to be called Hitler, son of Hitler or whatever. But here it's like he just changed his name to something else. It just and then Ethan Hunt knows who he is. It's like I don't know. It's oh god, it's so aggravating. It's one of the
Yeah,
most
it
like
was kind of
insulting
out of left
things.
field. No, I agree. I guess,
It's
and
not
I
out of left
wasn't
field.
hit.
It's
No.
lazy writing.
Yeah, so it
Is
absolutely is, but it is still out of left field. There's no, it's like when you have a murder mystery and it was like, oh, it's this person that was introduced 2 seconds ago that would not have any correlation to anything else in here. No,
yeah.
it was a callback at, it was a classic callback that is not done well. And
And,
again, like you
and
said, if he had done something where Shea Wiggins's character was, because we never really find out. You could have left it vague. It could have been for, the fact that he gets away with it. Everything he does, he basically gets away with. He's like Bugs Bunny.
yeah,
Um,
and
but
if
yeah,
his character
there
was
was
more
no reason for
interesting,
that.
yeah, if his character was more interesting to begin with, instead of just a guy running around throughout the movie, it would have been fine. But it's just it's a bloated. It's like, and this is a spoiler alert, but Scream, the Scream movie that introduced like the new Screams, the ones that came out in Radio Silence Group. They introduced the main actress as what's Skeet Ulrich's character.
Uh,
They
yeah, I'm drawing a
Anyways,
blank.
they made her into her son or his son or whatever, his daughter or whatever. Do you really have to do this? Like every Lego sequel has to do this shit where they like he's a Palpatine or he's a Skeet Ulrich's daughter or it's Jim Phillips's son. It's like
Well, hell, they did it
stop
with
doing
Laurie
that's not an Easter
Strode.
egg. That's you being lazy. That's
They
you.
they they did that with Laurie Strode and Michael Myers. I mean, in Halloween 2. So this isn't a
Well,
new
but
thing, but that
that's not
didn't
as
make sense
offensive as
either.
like that's not as offensive as like Laurie Strode 40 years later is in a compound putting up barriers for one night. I mean, PTSD and the level of like craziness that happened to her. I get that. You could be a insane asylum or whatever, but you're telling me a woman 40 years later is going to have a fortress mechanisms because she's afraid that a guy is going to break out.
I mean,
It's
maybe.
just like it's so stupid. Like that whole don't get me started with the Halloween franchise. Um, but anyways, yeah. So the Jim Phillips stuff is just it feels like it's such a lazy attempt to call back something. It's worse than the rabbit's foot stuff, which is not as offensive, but it didn't really need to be there. The entity could just be like Skynet. The best part about the Terminator franchise is Skynet was created just kind of in a bubble. Like it wasn't created based off something that happened to Ethan Hunt or whatever. It was they found. I mean, I guess they found a dead robot or whatever, android or killer robot, and then they took the pieces of it. But it feels more natural. It feels like more logical, even though it's not logical to something like this, where it's just like, I guess whatever. Like I don't mind when they use things from the past if it feels like it coincides easily and fits easily into the world. But when you use something like the rabbit's foot, which had a dangerous symbol on the front of it, that's what you're using as the creation of the entity is really stupid. It's just how I feel. I don't
No,
know.
that's fair. I think that,
But
like I say, this movie for many reasons lacks on plot. Like I think even if you really enjoy this one, if you go in with looking for anything plot driven, you're gonna walk away. You're still going to enjoy it, but I don't think you're gonna
hmm.
have the same level of enjoyment as someone that completely shuts off their brains and goes in and looks at the stunts and things like that.
I mean, to be fair, I get accused of that all the time for not turning off my brain for stupid movies, but you're talking to a
I
guy
think
that you're talking to a guy that kind of hated what's that movie I just watched? Oh, hated the Fountain of Youth movie, but enjoyed it because it's stupid and I love like treasure hunting movies.
and you can
Which
have
I
two
guess is
sides,
allowed
you
to
know?
I guess it's
Yeah.
allowed to really hate something but really enjoy it, like The Mummy, The National
It's a
Treasure, those
personal, okay, with any of this stuff. It
hmm,
is, you can have multiple opinions and a second viewing might change how you feel. One way or the other, now that you know where things are at. I mean,
yeah.
and I think, yeah, I mean, any summer blockbuster, you go back to the highlight of them back in the early 2000s, and all of those movies had these issues. When I walked out of this movie, it felt to me like a Fast and Furious sequel. Like we
Hmm.
went from we went from in like Fallout where you had a very very grounded, relatively straightforward tale, and that was like Fast and Furious maybe two or something, and then you come to these two movies and they're like Fast and Furious like five or six. Like
No,
it
they're more
goes
like
off the
Fast and
chain.
Furious 8 and 9 when they're jumping off buildings and shit.
Yeah,
They're
they
going
go into
down
outer
the
space, literally. I mean, that's
yeah.
the kind of the level we're talking about, and that's going from, again, a spy movie that has some sci-fi elements to a
Mm.
sci-fi movie, like a heavy sci-fi movie that has, a decent amount of spy stuff. Like that's been the transition between these two movies.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna say that I wasn't entertained by this movie, but when it comes to a critical eye and my views of this
Yeah,
franchise, I hold it in higher esteem than a lot of franchises because, I mean, Fast and Furious was good for like 3 or 4 movies, but I feel like, Mission Impossible has had like 5 or 6 great movies and, you know, Mission Impossible 2 and this movie notwithstanding. So I don't know. It is what it is in the end. I mean, Tom Cruise jumped and walked and, crawled on a plane. I
yeah.
mean,
I
you
mean,
don't get to see
you
that kind
have
of stuff.
to, right. And again, this is definitely worth seeing for the stunts and for
Mm,
the set pieces and those big action pieces. It's just that connective tissue that is lacking. And
yeah.
as long as you go in knowing that there is a lot of exposition and you're going to hear things multiple times and you will leave this movie knowing that Tom Cruise is the end all be all of things.
Yeah, actually, it'd been interesting if the guy who directed Top Gun Maverick, who's directing F1, would have directed this movie. How would it have been? I don't
I
know.
don't know. Hard to
Yeah.
say. What did you think? Okay, so here's a question. What did you think of the final thing with Luther? Like his final message?
Oh, I mean, if they're gonna kill off Luther, I thought it was a nice send off. Like this is where I look at it. If Luther had been sick and he had been keeping it from Ethan, I think that would have been fine. Killing him in a blast is kind of what. In the end, it's whatever. They sent him off, but if he had died like Val Kilmer did in Top Gun Maverick, and then they had like the poison pill, which had the stuff on the poison pill that talked to Ethan. I think that was a great send off. I think that's cool. He dies and all that stuff. There's a funeral at the end, and that poison pill like talks to him or whatever. And then it's like, oh, it's gonna it's gonna self destruct in 5 seconds, and he hands it to Henry Czerny character. I felt that was a touching moment. I just didn't like that they killed him by blast. It feels lazy to me personally. Like if
I
he had
mean, it's
died,
been
if he had
done in
been
a
like really,
lot of movies like that. Like that sacrifice.
yeah, I know. I feel like if like had been a thing that had been hinted in Dead Reckoning where he's coming off like he's really sick and maybe it's hinted at, it's just not really well put together. But if they had like kind of played in the fact that Ethan Hunt, who's very good at figuring out things, to kind of put together with the bed, he's like, "You're dying, aren't you?" And he's like, "Yeah." And then at the end, like as kind of a thing to kind of take away, or maybe he passes away at the beginning, and before he passes away, he gives off the poison pill. I think that it wouldn't have been a perfect ending, but I think it would have been a touching ending because clearly there's something wrong with Luther and even in Dead Reckoning if you kind of look at it closely. But here it just feels like, oh no, we're just gonna kill him by bomb blast. And
Yeah,
maybe
it was a
that's the only way they
little.
could feel like yeah.
It was a little overdone in that the fact that okay, he's in hospital scrubs. You've got the hospital bed in the background.
Hmm.
Like the fact that he was sick and there was the bomb, it was a little bit but I
Well,
don't
I
know.
mean, even if not that, if they had not done that and Luther had kind of gone with an adventure and he was kind of throughout the movie and did what he could, and then he died like at the end in the cavern with the bomb there, I think I would have like accepted that more because it doesn't feel like it's so sudden. It feels like, oh, Luther has done all this work and he has done everything he can, maybe on St. Matthew's Island or whatever. And then he had gotten to the point where they're in the cave. They have to figure out how to destroy the bomb. The rest of the crew go into the shelter or whatever as they're working on this. And Tom Cruise goes off and hops on planes and stuff like that. And then he's like, that's the way he has a send off. I think that would have been a much better send off for Luther than what we got, and I think that would have been it would have been something that hit me harder to be fairly honest, because people like like major characters die. I mean, in these types of in a
Yeah.
lot of these movies where you get attached to them, and so on and so forth. And to me, it's as lazy as when they killed off who's the guy who goes, it's a trap. Um,
Oh, Akbar.
yeah, Akbar. They just said, oh, Akbar's dead. I'm like, at what point did he? What? It's so stupid. But yeah, that's kind of where I see it. I think it would have been a nice send off near the end. It would have
Yeah.
felt more real than it does when it's just like, okay, cool. I don't know. That's just how I feel.
I could see it. I agree. I think it felt. I don't know. I agree. Like they killed him off so early, and that's supposed to be the motivation for, Ethan to kind of go on and do the thing. But it didn't. I don't know. Maybe I'm just a cold-hearted bitch, but it didn't really hit me.
I think why it hits me more than it probably hits you is like I've been with the series since it came out in '96. So you ever have series that you get like really attached to? Like for instance, me with Doctor Who. I'm not as attached to the characters as like say you or Dan from
Yeah.
TYTD are, or even Kurt or so on and so forth. So there might be characters in there from like the early Who's Doctor Who's that might show up. Well, there was is it Sarah Jane or somebody that popped up in that series in like the this came in like during that portion of the Doctor Who with Shudi.
Uh, I don't remember that much about the episode, honestly.
Okay, well,
I mean,
anyways, you know how
Sarah Jane Smith died a couple of years. The lady that played Sarah Jane Smith died a couple of years ago. Maybe it was River
okay,
Song.
maybe it was. I don't know. Anyways, the point I'm making is like Doctor Who. You guys have watched Doctor Who for years. I've only watched it for a couple years, so I'm not as like with the characters as like say you or Dan are.
Oh no,
It's
I
the
get
same
it.
thing here. It's like I think I'm more with the characters because I've been with them for so long. So a person like
Yeah.
Luther, it feels like it's more somebody that I've come to kind of grow
Oh
with
no,
because we're talking
I
about a
get
30-year
that.
old franchise at this point. So
Yeah. I mean, I remember watching the original Mission Impossible movie like back when it came out. But yeah, I definitely don't have the attack. Like I have watched them as they've come and go, but it's never been like as intense as it was for you, clearly.
it's like when 30, 35, 36 years into the Simpsons and one of the
It's an
major
investment.
one of the major voice actors is retiring. It's like, oh my God, it's been how long? You realize like how long you've been like, with it. But I
Right.
don't know. I think that's why it hit me harder with Luther than it
Oh yeah.
hits,
No, of
so
course. And it's a big character and Ving Rhames is a great actor. Like he's
yeah.
added a level of levity to these movies.
Yeah, exactly. Other than that, was there any, I mean, we've been talking for quite a while. Was there anything else you want to talk about with this movie that we haven't brought up yet? Anything
Offhandedly,
you,
I feel like I've said my piece. I mean, I
I wrote
enjoyed the
some
stunts.
notes.
Yeah, I enjoyed the stunts. I thought a lot of it was good, but like you said with the length, you start to kind of look at your watch at certain points
Hmm.
because it does go on, and the lulls in action are significant.
Yeah, yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it's it's so long. I was like, I don't know if you remember the chairs that were like AMC has these chairs, or used to have these chairs that are like really uncomfortable, and like when you went to a theater and like the seats were like had no, you couldn't go back or you couldn't
Yeah.
recline or anything like that. It was that type of seat for an IMAX movie for 2 hours.
Oh,
So my back and butt hurt for after a while. I had to pee
oof.
twice. It was crazy. Yeah. All right. So, nothing else you want to talk about? Nothing else that
Um, Tramell
is.
Tillman was freaking fantastic, and he needs to be put in more movies.
He needed to have his own like band and stuff like that. He should dance. He didn't dance in the movie. That's such a shame. Should have
Yeah,
danced.
that whole like between the sub and St. Matthew's Island, if we could have spent more time there because that was legitimately probably the best part of the movie for me.
Yeah. Damn it. They should have had the trumpet players and the. Oh, terrible. All right.
Cut to
So,
Severance for those that have no idea what the hell's going on.
well, yeah, that too. Um, all right. So, with that said, I think we're going to end it there on our spoiler discussion for Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. Chances are, maybe the last movie, if it doesn't do well. Lilo and Stitch came out the same weekend, so yeah, it's gonna be an interesting weekend for the Memorial Day weekend. Triv, thank you for joining me once again for a Mission Impossible movie breakdown.
Absolutely.
If there ever is another one, I'm sure I'll have you on, unless we have exploded by an entity that is called the American government. No, I'm just kidding. Well,
As
yeah.
long as
So,
it's not
anyways,
an entity.
I mean, that'd been probably more interesting. Have two pairs of
more,
eyes,
more
the eyes in
jiggle.
back of me. Yeah, two pairs. Yeah, we call him Jeff and Jeff Jr.
Oh God.
Anyways, so with that said, Triv, you have content that you work on from time to time. Where's that located?
Here on YouTube, you can find me at Trivial Theater. I do random, obscure, and straight up bad movies. I'm in the middle of a bunch of PSA riffs. One of which involves the gent to the left of me, I'm assuming, or to the right. The other gent that's on screen right now. Which was a lot of fun. So you definitely check those out. And thanks so much for having me on, Nick.
Oh yeah, definitely. And I will eventually have the other two Fifth Dimension videos up. I just kind of took a break from it because 4 years of doing videos on a constant basis can it's a lot of work. But like I said, Trev is with me and Jacob and all that good stuff for the Fifth Dimension. We completed the whole entire series. That is the Rod Serling original 1960s series. So look forward to that. I'm going to post this video literally the day after we record this. So I will have a Dogma review coming up for the 25th anniversary. I will
Wahoo!
have The Prosecutor. I will have Karate Kid Legends. Still working on Murderbot as this review. I'll have the 4th episode up next week, and yeah, still working on some videos. So it's busy that time of the year. But look forward to that. Look forward to Triv's videos that she puts out because they're always amazing.
Ah,
And
cheers.
we'll head out, and that's mission accomplished on Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning. And for myself and Triv, we'll see you guys next time. Peace out, guys.
It's your team now. Da,
Oh
da, da, da,
no,
da, da, da,
recording.
da, 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 da.